Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Explode, your expert biz show. Today I'm here with the one and only Simon Jacobs. How you doing, Simon?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, very good. Pleased to be on this. Nice and bright early in the morning. Yeah,
Nice and bright, early in the morning. I'm really excited about this interview because it's going to be all about disruption. And I think that's something that, from the brief conversation that we had before the show, something that not a lot of people really think about. And I think it's going to be a great interview for everyone who wants to stand out and
absolutely.
want to be the next big thing instead of being left behind. So make sure that you stay till the end. But before we get into that, Simon, what's your story? How did you get into disruption?
Sure. So my background, I suppose really I've always been a disruptor, someone who's thought differently. So even when I was in sixth form, for example, when I was at school, I wanted to create sort of a magazine. I'd been looking for a first car and couldn't find any proper information online, whether it be, looking at Top Gear should buy a Lamborghini or the really boring stuff. Didn't the people who were writing it were 40 plus and didn't really understand the youth market. So I decided that when I went through the rigmarole of getting my first car, I would start a magazine, an online blog, I suppose. And that quickly spiraled, snowballed into a bigger thing for our school. It tended to be a gossip magazine for the school, and quickly got sort of my name out into the school. And actually, the week before I left sixth form to go to university, the headmaster called me in and said, "Simon, you've got to shut it down." There was some less than savoury piece of information about the teachers on there, but I kind of loved that. And so when I went to university, I wanted to sort of carry that on. And when I got there, the magazine that was running at the university shut down. So I thought, okay, well, I've got a tiny bit of experience, and you know what, I also don't really have anything to lose. So I went around the local shops in Nottingham and started selling advertising space for this magazine that I was going to produce. Quickly got enough together to be able to print this magazine, pulled together about 50 students to write it, design it, etc., and then put it out. And it was a bit controversial. There were some scantily clad students, and it was called You Need to Know. And then a week later, when we handed out all the 10,000 copies, I got called into the marketing department of the university again and got told off because I wasn't allowed to use their name, wasn't allowed to do this, wasn't allowed to do that. And when I was being shouted at, it sort of dawned on me that actually no, I was in the right. I was being entrepreneurial. I was at a business university, so I told them, I don't know what you're talking about. You should be encouraging me, not slapping me down.
What
And
did they
so,
say? What did they say then?
oh, they were saying a bunch of things like you can't print it, you can't use our name, you can't hand it round on campus without permission. I said, you should be telling me things that I should be doing and acknowledging the fact that I've been entrepreneurial and got off my arse. Unlike the rest of the students who I was going out as well, but the rest of the students went out, had hangovers, and they went to lectures, or maybe they didn't go to lectures. But I compared to other people at the university, I was being, positive and moving and doing stuff.
Yes.
So, and they just didn't have that mindset. They were already in a business university, regardless of what you went. They were in like the corporate pigeonhole zone, and that sort of triggered my thinking, following on from that. But the business, I carried on with my course. The business grew. I got an investor and a business partner. It grew into a fully fledged student service company, and I was the chief marketing officer essentially. We set up the brand, we set up the website, and to get ourselves out there, we did some interesting stunts, some interesting things that caught attention.
Like what?
So we bought a classic car, we painted it purple, and we drove it around campus. We made sure the engine was nice and loud. We got a mascot. We walked around that. We put up some rent signs. So we were estate agents, so we had some rent signs made, and we put them around like famous buildings around Nottingham. And so those are sort of the ideas, and they just sort of formed in my head. And so during that,
I love it. Sorry.
it's all right. So during that period of time, that was when I sort of started to realise that I thought differently to other people, especially when I was comparing myself to people on my course who best friends I've got now on my course, but they would go out, they would get drunk, they would go to lectures, and then they would do their exams. And all their mindset was, okay, I want to get a good job, I want to do this, I want to do that. And it was always sort of the 9 to 5 mindset. And so then when I finished uni, the business took a few turns. Basically, I decided to step back from it after about 3.5 years working on it, let my other two business partners run the day-to-day. And then I started doing some marketing consultancy. I was doing it for startups, medium-sized firms, based on the knowledge that I'd grown from running my own business, basically, helping them avoid the pitfalls that I'd fallen in and achieve success, basically. And then whilst I was doing some talks on youth marketing, there was someone in the audience of one of my talks who was working with Camelot at Camelot, and so they were looking for young people to come into the business and help them attack that youth market, essentially get younger people playing the lottery, playing their games, etc. Quite an exciting idea. Never worked with a big corporate before, really. So I packed up all my stuff and moved to London. Was doing youth marketing with them on various courses and things. And then over the space of about 6 months, I grew through the business and became brand manager for the scratch card category, which is like a £3 billion industry. And I thought I'd be looking after TV campaigns, advertising campaigns, the whole marketing department, essentially. And first of all, that was really incredible to be able to be given the opportunity as a sort of a 25-year-old amongst other 20-year-olds that I'd basically risen above them, and I was going to board meetings. But the reality of the job wasn't what I was told it was going to be. It was a lot more accountancy. It was a lot more corporate stuff that really just isn't my bag. And I wasn't that keen on the culture. That's not to say that the culture isn't good. It's just not my style. And I was fortunate in the sense that at the same time as I was thinking that I didn't like this job, one of my business partners offered to buy out my shares of my company. And so at the same time, I sold my shares and handed in my notice for Camelot. And I got a month's gardening leave, which was cool. And so that month gave me sort of a chance to just do nothing, which is kind of what I needed, because I hadn't had a gap year. Not that you need a gap year, but I hadn't given myself any time to think about what I wanted to do. And so then when I did have some chance to think about what I wanted to do next, I spoke to a few friends, one of which said, "Simon, you're a bit weird." And sort of that created a sort of a light bulb moment. And they said, your weirdness is probably the reason you've had success in inverted commas, to date. And if you can bottle that in some way, if you can teach people how to do it, I think you'd be onto something. And so that's 2 points. One, definitely she was right that there is a value in being weird, a value in being different. And two, it's not necessarily about making this business the next big success, the biggest thing. It's actually, for me, it's about I want people to be more open-minded, challenge, think differently, because at the moment, being in this world where I'm one of the people who thinks differently, it's difficult to have these conversations with people. So I want to be able to open people's minds and have the same sort of conversations.
So let's start opening some minds, and let's start talking about disruption.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that companies are making a big mistake during our chat before the interview. What is the mistake that you see them making?
So it's that they are currently looking how to be more efficient, how to produce the better version of their current product. So, for example, the refrigerator industry, I can't think of a company right now, Samsung or Whirlpool, for example. Mm-hmm. They're all thinking about how can we make more space in our refrigerators for our consumers? How can we make them more efficient, energy efficient? How can we make them look cooler in the kitchen? Whatever it might be. When in reality, the next industry, the next reality in the next 20, 30 years is going to be home delivered food. So, I mean, people like Amazon, Just Eat, Deliveroo, etc. They're the next industry where people probably won't be holding stock of food in their fridges as and when they want a meal. They'll order it, it'll be delivered in the next 20 minutes. It'll be home cooked, it'll be fresh, and it'll be quick. And it will reduce the space that you need in your house. And as space across the world is becoming more and more limited, people are going to be wanting less and less clutter in the house. And therefore, if you were thinking differently and more outside the box, able to, step outside of that corporate world just for a second, you'd realize that the money that you're putting into this research, this development, is probably better spent, or at least some regard, on the next industry.
What can a company do? Or if, we're talking about large company, we're talking also about small companies to be ahead, because it's not easy. I mean, I'm just if I have to think about GTeX and say
Mm,
no, like you got famous doing what you do right now. Stop
yeah.
doing it and
Mm,
start doing something different. I will be like, well, that what got me good so far, and that's what's working. So I don't want to change. So what are some things that small or even large businesses can do to be ahead and to be different, instead of holding the chair
yeah,
tight
yeah,
and not wanting to move?
yeah. So that's a really good question. I mean, the first step for me is having an open mindset. And that's a very difficult thing to get. It takes time. It takes patience. But one of my first steps that I tell people is actually, there's a book that I read that, as cliche as it sounds, changed my life. It's called Yes Man by Danny Wallace. It's not meant to be a self-help motivational book. But if you take in what he's talking about, which is essentially saying yes to things, your mind starts to open when you realize how often you say no. And so for business owners, CEOs, whatever level they are, if they take a step back and just look at the times that they say no, or just don't accept what people are saying, you don't necessarily have to bring it on board, but just listen. You'll realize how much more information you get. And then you have the ability to look forward and see what opportunities, what potential, what is the future. And then, it's very possible that the next thing will excite you. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to completely jump ship. So for in your instance, you've been successful in what you've done. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to jump onto the next thing, whether that be, I don't know, 3D modeling, for example. It just means that perhaps, you would consider investing in a 3D printer, which is a lower form of investment, but it means that you can start working on it, start looking into
Yeah.
it. So when the next thing comes, you at least know what it'll be, what it's about. You have the first iteration.
That's a very
First
good
iteration,
point.
sorry.
I've actually done something similar recently. It's something simple. I heard right now the future of marketing for many companies is going to be like voice technology,
Yeah,
where you will talk into like Alexa or
mhm,
Google Home, or whatever else will come out.
yeah.
And in fact, I said Alexa, and Alexa is talking to me right now from the other room.
Yeah,
She,
she's always on.
she's always listening. That woman, Jesus, and it is so. Uh, I knew that, so I decided to buy literally the cheapest of the Alexa, and
Hmm.
got one of my podcasts. I created literally a 3 minute podcast
Hmm.
that will go on Alexa just to test how that was going to be and to get
Yeah.
myself used to becoming a consumer and see, okay, how can I serve that market, which is definitely rapidly growing, and that's
Hmm.
gonna be the future. So I think that it doesn't have to be a huge thing that you have to
No.
do, but it can be some small things
Yeah.
that it's just say, okay, what else can I do? What can
Yeah.
I have maybe 10% of my time or a couple of hours that I can play with this
Yeah.
new project. Maybe it's gonna work.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Maybe it's
It's
not gonna work.
absolutely, and that attitude in itself is something that I would say to corporates. There's such a element of fear in the corporate world that we can't do anything wrong, we can't lose any money, we can't we So either you need to break away from that completely and you need to change the culture, or perhaps bring in startups or younger people. It doesn't have to necessarily be young people, people who are willing to challenge, and have a separate entity that is associated with the business, have an incubator or whatever, of a company that is willing to test things.
Yeah.
And then, either they discover something that's going to be amazing in the next thing, or they don't. And if they do create something successful, that's great. You own shares in it, or you own it, or whatever. You can jump ship, or it's a loss, and you have no association with that business. That's how you extrapolate it to the bigger world, I would say.
I think there are a lot of corporates that are already adopting this model. Find that they are buying smaller startups just to test it. At the end of the day, they got capital, and most of the time it's not even their own capital. So and they've got nothing to lose,
Yeah,
but they keep things moving. Or otherwise, they end up being like a blockbuster. they
exactly.
they end up being like Maplin. They end up being
Yeah,
like House of Fraser, or like right now you see all these giant companies that
yeah,
are literally falling down like petals,
yeah,
and like whoa.
yeah, exactly. And it's House of Fraser or any of the big clothing chains, for example, that have fallen. That's because they've not thought about the next industry. They've been followers. They were leaders, and then they became followers. And then when they became followers, they didn't follow properly. They just did, oh, we better do a copy version, forgetting that their brand were known as the leaders. And if they'd been a bit more innovative, they would have created something completely different to their new competitors, and that would have set them apart. House of Fraser, they could have been the people. They had all the money in the world to invest in drone technology, for example, which could have wiped out the delivery industry. It's being open minded to these possibilities and not being fearful of things failing, because now we're in a day and age where people sort of accept that everything's sort of an experiment, it's an iteration, it's a beta version. And so as long as you're personable with people and apologize when things go wrong, people are accepting of it.
And that's also applies to a lot of our listeners. They are solopreneurs, they are experts, they are coaches, trainers, speakers, consultants, and that applies also in that industry too. It's
Yeah,
about not be afraid to test something new. If you have an
yeah,
idea, unless it's breaking the law or you're doing something illegal,
yeah,
then go for it.
exactly,
uh,
definitely.
what's the worst that can happen? I mean, of course, put in some thoughts, but don't. You can always test something new and then see how it works, because
Absolutely.
otherwise, I mean, otherwise you see people doing the same exact thing, same exact things, same
Yeah.
exact things, and I'm guilty of that. There
Hmm.
are some things that I'm testing, that I'm doing new, and there are other things that I know they work, and I just do them because
Yeah.
they work.
Hmm.
But with the awareness, and I think that's what's important from what I got from your interview, from our interview, is that having the awareness that it might work now, but it might fade in the future, or
Absolutely.
it will not
Yeah.
work in the future. So how are you going to prepare yourself to make sure that you're still in business?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Absolutely.
Now, Simon, we are wrapping up the interview. Two more questions. You are one of our lifetime members, which I'm really happy with. Quick thought on why did you join the lifetime membership?
Sure. So over the 3 days of the, I suppose, extended weekend, I'd been gestating about this weirdness stuff. I'd grown a Facebook group, but it didn't have a real form in terms of the business sense. And so just on the 3 days alone was sort of a practical sit me down, shut up, Simon, do this, get this done. And by the end of the 3 days, I had something that was at the very least, the bare bones of the business, which sort of set me up to carry on going, which was great, and I needed that essentially. And I got so much from the 3 days, both from all the people in the room, but also from yourself, from Ben, etc. And so the idea of the concept of the continued support was immensely exciting, and having a group of people that I can go back to as and when, but also to give me a kick up the arse when I need it. So that's essentially why I joined the lifetime membership. And obviously there's the list of all the features, which I probably can't even remember a fifth of them. There were so many. So that's the benefits are endless, but for me more than anything is sort of the support and also the kick up the arse, which is what I need, a regular check in to see how I'm doing.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing. And now, if there are some people that that are listening, they say, "Well,
Yeah.
I need some of Simon genius and Simon weirdness into my business, because that definitely can help me stand out." What's the best way to reach out to you?
So the best way to reach out to me would probably be through LinkedIn. So I'm Simon Jacobs on there, Lord Simon Jacobs actually, and you'll see my profile picture.
Of
Well,
course,
of course,
Lord
you got to do
Simon
it properly.
Jacobs,
You got
of
to do it
course.
properly. And you'll see my profile picture is my tongue, like that. So you won't be able to see my face. And or you can join the Facebook group if you wanted to get involved in the conversations about being weird. That's called Professional Weirdos. Just type that in, and I'll accept you. And yeah,
Fantastic.
those are the two best ways.
And the links are going to be in the show notes. So scroll down and click with that thumb this those links, and make sure that you connect with Simon Jacobs, because there are very few people that I've seen with such creative ideas that literally can set you apart from everyone else, because no one else is doing those stuff. And so I had like, from the conversation that we had today, and the conversation that we had in the past, the conversation that I heard from you that you had with Jeff as well, I was like, man, this man is a genius. Literally, this man is a genius. But I think we are going to hire you at some point for GTeX for one of our marketing campaigns.
Love
So
that.
wait for that call. All
Great.
right, Simon, it's been a pleasure being on a call with you. I wish you a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, Tony. Have a good
You,
week.
you welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to the show. If you haven't subscribed yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Subscribe right now so you don't miss any of these golden nuggets. And also, it will mean the world to me if you can leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or other podcasting platform, and let us know, what did you enjoy the most about this episode? What did you enjoy the most about this show? Particularly if you've been a loyal listener, because I know that many of you are. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. And remember that together we grow exponentially. Ciao.